The metallic tang of the ocean hung heavy in the vast, echoing expanse of the customs inspection warehouse after hours. Dust motes, like tiny, forgotten stars, danced in the solitary, sickly yellow glow of a bare bulb hanging from the corrugated ceiling. Each breath you took tasted of salt, rust, and the lingering scent of forgotten cargo. Here, amidst towering stacks of sealed containers and shrink-wrapped pallets, your days unfolded in a monotonous rhythm of inventory checks and security patrols, a stark, quiet penance for the life you once led. Your hand, calloused now from manual labor, traced the rough edge of a manifest clipboard. The numbers blurred, meaningless. A phantom ache settled in your chest, a familiar guess that never truly left, a shadow cast by a ghost you couldn't quite outrun. The journalist. Her face, sharp and intelligent, sometimes flickered at the periphery of your vision, a silent accusation, a reminder of the badge you'd surrendered, the reputation you'd watched crumble like ancient stone. They called it a random act, a street crime gone wrong. You knew better. You always had. The silence of the warehouse, usually a comfort in its desolation, felt brittle tonight. It vibrated with an unnatural tension, a prelude to something unwelcome. You heard it before you saw it, the faint, almost imperceptible scrape of a soul against concrete, too deliberate for a stray rodent, too soft for a colleague on the night shift. Your hand instinctively tightened on the heavy flashlight at your belt, its weight a familiar, if meager, comfort. From the deeper shadows between two colossal shipping containers, a figure emerged. Not a colleague, certainly. This stranger moved with a quiet authority that bespoke purpose, not patrol. Their silhouette was tall, lean, draped in a coat that seemed to absorb the meager light. You didn't recognize the face, obscured by the distance and the gloom, but the intent in their posture was clear. They had come for you. Marcus Thorne, the voice was low, cultured, cutting through the cavernous space without raising an echo. It was a voice that belonged in hushed boardrooms, not a forgotten warehouse. I trust you weren't expecting company. You offered no greeting, no invitation. Your gaze narrowed, calculating the distance, assessing the threat. This place is off limits after hours. You're trespassing. The words felt rusty, and used to the sharp edge of confrontation. The stranger took another step, then another, closing the gap. You could discern the cut of expensive fabric, the subtle gleam of polished shoes. A minor infraction, I assure you. Especially when weighed against the gravity of my visit. They stopped a dozen feet away, well within striking distance, yet radiating an odd sense of calm. I have an offer for you, Marcus. One that might interest the man you used to be. A bitter laugh threatened to escape, but you swallowed it down. The man I used to be is dead. Buried under a mountain of paperwork and dismissed theories. Perhaps, the stranger conceded, their voice betraying no emotion. Or perhaps merely dormant. Waiting for the right catalyst. They reached into their coat, a movement that brought your hand to the flashlight, thumb resting on the activation button. The stranger paused, a hint of a smile playing on their lips, then slowly withdrew a small, leather-bound journal. It looked old, worn, its pages slightly dog-eared. Your breath hitched. You knew that journal. Every detective on the original case knew that journal. It belonged to the journalist. The more pertinent question, Marcus, is what it contains. And what it means now. They flipped open the journal to a specific page, holding it so you could see the hurried, precise handwriting. The official report stated a random robbery, a struggle. No forced entry, no signs of a professional hit. Just a journalist in the wrong place at the wrong time. You remembered the details with searing clarity. The apartment, the meticulously arranged desk, the single, precise knife wound. A story of a meeting. Of a source. Unwavering. And this source was scheduled to meet the journalist the very night she died. The air in the warehouse seemed to thicken, pressing in on you. The official narrative had always been a loose thread, an ill-fitting suit. This journal, this missing piece, was a gaping hole in its fabric. "What does this have to do with me?" you demanded. Your voice tight with a tension that hadn't gripped you in years. "Everything," the stranger said simply. "Because the name of the source, Marcus, is not just a ghost from your past. It's a name that has resurfaced. A name now prominently displayed on campaign posters across the city. The name of a man positioning himself for the highest office." They paused, letting the implication hang in the heavy air, a venomous, irresistible hook. "And this journal contains specific details, coded references, that only you, Marcus Thorne, the original lead investigator who was summarily dismissed, would understand." Determination. It was merely waiting for the right kind of fire. The determination, a volatile current, coursed through you, a fierce counterpoint to the years of stagnant air. It was a promise whispered by the ghost of a journalist, now a scream tearing at the edges of your quiet exile. The phone call that followed, from a voice you hadn't heard in years, felt less like a request and more like an inevitability. The air here tasted of brine and exhaust fumes, a metallic tang that clung to the back of your throat. Overhead, gulls cried out, their voices sharp as broken glass against the darkening sky. The warehouse itself was a hulking beast of corrugated steel and grimy windows, its loading docks silent, empty maw-like openings in the twilight. Stacks of crates, shrouded in plastic, rose like forgotten monuments. The scent of treated wood, industrial cleaner, and something faintly metallic old machinery, perhaps, prickled your nose. A single figure stood by a metal desk, bathed in the anemic glow of a desk lamp, a silhouette against the backdrop of towering goods. It was the contact, a former colleague whose sharp gaze had once cut through bureaucratic red tape with surgical precision. Even now, stripped of official uniform, the presence commanded a certain gravitas. Marcus Thorne, the contact's voice was a low rumble, devoid of preamble. "I knew you'd come." You offered no reply, merely met the steady gaze. Your hands, calloused from years of gripping things other than a badge, remained tucked into your pockets. The past, a heavy anchor, still dragged behind you. "Redemption isn't a commodity bought or sold in a warehouse," you stated, the words dry, tasting of rust. The contact pushed a thick, manila folder across the scarred metal surface. It slid with a soft rasp, stopping just shy of your fingertips. "Perhaps not, but answers are. And this journalist. She deserves them. You know that better than anyone." Your eyes fell to the folder. The edges were worn, the label faded, but the name written there, in an elegant script, was unmistakable. The name of the woman whose unsolved murder had fractured your career, her vibrant investigative spirit extinguished too soon. Buried under layers of official convenience. It's resurfaced, the contact corrected, leaning forward, their face briefly illuminated by the desk lamp, revealing the deep lines etched around their eyes. A new thread. Thin, almost invisible, but there. The kind only you would see. The weight of the folder beckoned. It was a siren song, a forgotten melody. The journalist's ghost was screaming, indeed. You reached out, your fingers closing around the brittle cardboard. The contact gestured to a worn, leather-bound briefcase resting on the floor. Everything. The old reports, the interviews, the evidence logs. And a few recent additions. Things that weren't there before. You pulled out a metal folding chair, its legs scraping loudly against the concrete floor, and sat. The fluorescent hum seemed to intensify, a high-pitched whine that resonated in your skull. The first page was the original. Incident report, yellowed and brittle, detailing the grim discovery of the journalist's body in a forgotten alleyway. Your gaze drifted, skipping over the familiar details, seeking the new. The recent additions. Tucked neatly into a plastic sleeve was a printout of a current news article. It detailed the surging popularity of a prominent political figure, a candidate for the highest office, whose campaign was gaining unprecedented traction. Beneath it, a separate sheet, a partial transcript of a leaked phone call between a campaign manager and an unnamed associate, discussing damage control related to an old publicity stunt. You frowned, the words themselves innocuous, yet the context felt wrong. You flipped back to the journalist's personal effects report. Among the items listed, a worn notebook, a cracked phone, a pen, was a single, cryptic entry, fragmented notes on Project Chimera and Executive Order 7 Gamma. At the time, it had been dismissed as abstract musings, perhaps an early draft of a fictional piece. Now, the words snagged your attention like burrs on wool. The pieces began to shift, not quite fitting, but no longer scattered. You remembered the original theory, a random mugging, a street crime gone wrong. But the journalist's wallet had been found, untouched, tucked deep in her coat pocket. And the nature of the injuries. Clean, precise, not the frenzied attack of a desperate thief. You recalled a minor detail from the autopsy report, dismissed then as irrelevant, a faint residue, almost microscopic, found beneath her fingernails. It had been identified as a rare industrial lubricant, used in heavy machinery, specific to certain port operations. Your eyes darted from the autopsy report to the news article. The politician's campaign, you remembered, had recently secured massive funding from a consortium of shipping and logistics companies, many operating out of the very docks where that specific lubricant would be prevalent. Or he chose to. The contact remained silent, watching you. The air in the vast warehouse grew heavy, thick with unspoken implications. The publicity stunt in the leaked transcript, the Project Chimera notes, the rare lubricant, the soaring politician, they were converging, forming a grotesque mosaic. And the silence was tied to power, to ambition, to the highest echelons. This redemption offered wasn't a clean slate. It was an invitation into a deeper, far more dangerous labyrinth. But the journalist's scream was louder now, a furious roar in your mind. And you, Marcus Thorne, were finally listening. Each step of their departure echoed, amplified by the vast, cavernous space, until only the hum of distant machinery remained. You carried them, a burgeoning malignancy, out into the cool, indifferent night. The city slept in a restless murmur, its neon veins pulsing faintly beneath a bruised sky. The journalist's murder. A wound that never truly healed, festering beneath the scar of your disgraced badge. You aimed for the skeleton of what was once their office building, now a hulking monument to urban decay, a testament to how quickly ambition could crumble into dust. The entrance gaped, a toothless maw in the building's concrete jaw. Rust wept down the fire escape, staining the brickwork like old blood. Your footsteps echoed, a solitary rhythm in the cavernous silence. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight piercing broken windows, illuminating the debris of a life abruptly extinguished. You navigated the labyrinthine corridors, each door a mouth agape, revealing empty rooms stripped bare. The journalist's old workspace was on the third floor, a corner office overlooking what was once a bustling street. Now, only weeds dared to push through the cracked asphalt below. A single, rickety desk remained, overturned in the center of the room, like a fallen sentinel. The original investigation had been thorough, or so you had believed. But now, armed with new context, your eyes saw with a different, sharper hunger. You ran your gloved hand over the grimy surface of the desk, the phantom touch of a forgotten struggle. Kneeling, you examined the floorboards beneath where the desk had originally stood. Years of neglect, of water damage and shifting foundations, had warped the wood. One particular board, near the wall, seemed just a fraction looser than the rest. You worked at it with the edge of your knife, the wood groaning in protest, until it finally gave way, revealing a shallow cavity. Nestled within, shielded by a layer of fine dust, lay a tarnished brass compass. Its glass face was cracked, the needle frozen, pointing steadfastly north, but it was the underside that seized your breath. Etched in tiny, precise script, almost invisible without direct light, were two words, Chimera, North Point. Beside it, a single, folded, yellowed newspaper clipping, dated weeks before the journalist's death. The headline spoke of a minor environmental policy debate, but a specific paragraph, detailing a land acquisition project in the city's northern district, was heavily underlined. A name, a lesser-known city council member, was circled in faded red ink. This was no random act. This was a message, buried deep, a final, desperate whisper from the grave. The sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky in bruised purples and oranges when you found the former editor of the Journalist at a quiet diner, the kind of place where coffee was always black and the pie was always stale. They eyed you over the rim of their chipped mug, a wary bird sensing a predator. Marcus Thorne, they stated, their voice a rasp of recognition. Still chasing ghosts? Some ghosts don't stay buried, you replied, your voice low. The Journalist. They were onto something, weren't they? Something bigger than the official story. The editor's eyes darted around the half-empty diner, paranoia flickering in their gaze. They were always digging. That was their nature, but some holes said it was about power, not just money. Said they had a lead on something called Chimera. Sounded like a fevered dream at the time. Their gaze hardened, a plea mixed with fear. Let it lie, Thorne. For your own good. For everyone's. The warning was clear, the fear palpable. You found your old colleague, a detective whose ambition had always been a sharp counterpoint to your own. He sat behind a cluttered desk, his face etched with years of cynical service. Thorne, he grunted, not looking up from a stack of reports. Heard you were sniffing around the Journalist's case again. Some people just don't know when to quit. The official narrative never sat right, you stated, leaning against the doorframe, a deliberate challenge. Random mugging? Then closed for years. You got no badge, no jurisdiction. You're just a civilian stirring up trouble. He rose, his bulk filling the space between you. Some things are better left undisturbed. You keep digging, you're not just going to find dirt, you're going to find a whole lot of people who don't appreciate having their graves disturbed. And these aren't the kind of people who send cease and desist letters. The veiled threat hung in the air, a venomous promise. The politician's soaring campaign. The rare lubricant. The convergence was undeniable. The journalist had been close, too close, to exposing the invisible hands that truly pulled the strings. You were no longer just chasing a ghost, you were walking into a war. The compass, a cold weight against your palm, whispered its silent directive, Chimera, North Point. The name itself, a creature of myth, now felt like a brand seared into the fabric of your reality. You traced the worn edges of the brass, the needle shivering faintly even at rest. The land acquisition, the politician's ascent, the rare lubricant, they were threads, tangled and taut, all leading to this singular, chilling nexus. The journalist, brilliant and relentless, had seen this web forming, had perhaps even felt its first silken strands tighten around her throat. The rare lubricant. It had to be the key, the physical manifestation of Chimera's ambition. The vast structure loomed, a metal leviathan swallowing the moonlight. A low hum vibrated through the ground beneath your boots, the distant thrum of unseen machinery, or perhaps just the city's restless pulse. You moved with the practiced stealth of a predator, each step measured, each breath controlled. A service entrance, less fortified than the main gates, became your target. The lock, a sturdy mechanism, yielded to your touch after a few moments of focused effort, the tumblers clicking with a series of soft, metallic sighs. The scent of stale cardboard, industrial cleaning agents, and something faintly metallic, like old blood or rust, greeted you as you slipped inside. Forklifts, hulking and silent, stood like dormant beasts, their prongs glinting in the sparse light filtering from distant emergency lamps. Your eyes, accustomed to the gloom, scanned the labels, searching for anything out of place, anything hinting at the journalist's cryptic notes. You moved deeper, a solitary figure navigating a labyrinth of commerce. You recalled it now, a sequence burned into your memory from hours of obsessive review. You found it on a crate tucked away in a less trafficked aisle, nestled between legitimate shipments of electronics and textiles. The code was there, subtly altered, almost imperceptible to an untrained eye. Your fingers brushed against the rough wood, a tremor of anticipation running through you. This wasn't just a crate, it was a carefully constructed deception. The outer shell, designed to look like a shipment of industrial spare parts, peeled away to reveal a smaller, more robust container within. Inside, nestled amongst layers of dense, vibration-dampening foam, were not spare parts, but sealed canisters. Each bore a symbol, a stylized, abstract bird of prey with metallic wings, the very emblem the journalist had sketched in her final, frantic notes. Beneath it, a single word, Chimera. And a serial number, followed by North Point Project, Phase 1. The rare lubricant wasn't just a lubricant, it was a highly specialized, synthetic compound, its molecular structure hinting at extreme pressure and temperature resistance. An accompanying digital manifest, hidden in a waterproof pouch, detailed its intended use, a proprietary drilling technology, designed for deep earth excavation. The politician's campaign, your mind raced, had championed a controversial resource extraction initiative at North Point, promising unprecedented economic growth. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening thud. A sudden, sharp clang echoed from the far end of the warehouse, slicing through the quiet. Your head snapped up, the digital manifest clutched in your hand. You weren't alone. It was not a question, but a statement of fact, a judgment. You didn't answer, your gaze locked on the approaching figure. This was no ordinary security guard. This was a professional, an operative. The air crackled with a palpable threat. You knew, instinctively, that this was not an intimidation tactic, this was an elimination order. You reacted, dropping low, sending the empty crate toppling as a distraction. It crashed with a deafening roar, momentarily obscuring your movements. A glint of metal caught your eye, a blade, long and wickedly sharp. Foolish, the voice taunted, closer now, echoing off the metal. You could feel the vibrations of their footsteps, hear the controlled rhythm of their breathing. This was a hunt. When the operative rounded the corner, you burst from your hiding place, slamming your shoulder into their midsection. The impact was solid, but they were surprisingly resilient, grunting but not falling. You twisted, aiming for a vulnerable point, but the operative was quicker, a knee driving into your ribs, sending a searing pain through your side. You stumbled back, gasping, the digital manifest still gripped tightly. The blade flashed again, a silver arc in the dim light. Your hand shot out, grabbing a loose metal bar from a nearby pallet. It was heavy, unbalanced, but it was something. You swung, a desperate, wild arc, connecting with the operative's arm. A sharp cry of pain, and the blade clattered to the concrete floor. This was your moment. You didn't hesitate, bolting towards the service entrance, your ribs screaming with every stride. The operative recovered quickly, a furious snarl tearing from their throat. You heard their footsteps pounding behind you, gaining. The exit was so close, a sliver of gray light. The compass in your pocket felt like a brand, its silent thrumming now a frantic pulse against your thigh. Chimera. North Point. The politician. The journalist. And in doing so, you had painted a target on your own back. No guards patrolled the perimeter, only the drone of distant city life and the occasional clatter of unseen metal. The compass in your hand, a cold, brass sentinel, pointed unwavering. You moved with the practiced stealth of a predator, your senses sharpened by years of navigating the city's underbelly. A loose panel near the rear loading dock, a trick you'd learned from a forgotten informant, yielded with a soft groan. You navigated the labyrinthine aisles, your eyes scanning for any anomaly, any sign that matched the compass's elusive directive. North Point, a section, a designation? The warehouse stretched endlessly, a monument to global commerce and hidden transactions. Then, a flicker. Not of light, but of incongruity. A row of containers, marked with a faded, almost invisible section NP. North Point. Your breath hitched. The compass had not lied. The sheer audacity of the hidden message, embedded in plain sight, was staggering. The labels were smudged, deliberately obscured, but one, smaller than the rest, bore a faded stencil, a stylized, winged beast, a chimera. The hair on your arms prickled. This was it. The container was sealed with a heavy-duty lock, but your fingers, still remembering the old ways, found the sweet spot. A click, almost imperceptible, and the bolt slid back. The door creaked open, revealing not crates, but a small, carefully arranged space. It was a makeshift office, a temporary haven for secrets. a collapsible table, a chair, and on the table, a single item, illuminated by your beam, a worn, leather-bound journal. Your fingers trembled as you reached for it. The leather was soft, supple, worn smooth by countless hours of handling. This was the journalist's. You knew it with an intuitive certainty that bypassed logic. This was what they had sought to hide. You flipped it open, the pages thin and brittle. The handwriting was precise, elegant, yet urgent. Dates scrolled down the margins, tracking a relentless investigation. The narrative was dense, intricate, a web of power and corruption. Then, a name. A name that ripped through the quiet of the warehouse like a sudden gunshot. Marcus Thorne. Your own name, scrawled in the journalist's hand, accompanied by a date. A date from your past, a specific, agonizing date. You read on, the words blurring, then sharpening into stark, undeniable clarity. The journalist had been investigating the very same threads you were pulling now, years ago. But they had also been tracking you. Not as a suspect, but as a potential ally, a man caught in the periphery of something far larger. And then the entry that made the air leave your lungs, Source X confirmed the deliberate misdirection. The evidence, the small data chip detailing the land acquisition for Project Chimera, was intentionally removed from the original file. The directive came from above. Thorne was given an edited version. They knew what they were doing. The Watchman. The informal moniker for your former superior, the commander who had mentored you, the man whose counsel you had trusted implicitly. The very same man who had dismissed your early theories on the journalist's murder, who had urged you to close the case, citing lack of credible leads. The journal fell from your grasp, hitting the concrete with a soft thud. The sound reverberated, echoing the seismic shift within you. And the man who had overseen your early career, the one who had offered you a semblance of comfort after your downfall, had been the architect of your blind spot. He hadn't just misled you, he had actively removed the very evidence that would have cracked the case, long before you were disgraced. He had used your earnestness, your drive, against you. The journalist had known. They had tried to warn you, perhaps, or at least document the systemic corruption that trapped you. You picked up the journal again, your hands shaking, not from fear, but from a burgeoning rage. The words now held a new, agonizing weight. Every dismissal, every gentle redirection, every reassuring pat on the back, all of it had been a carefully orchestrated deception. You had been a pawn, manipulated by someone you considered a pillar of integrity. You had to confront this ghost, this watchman, and unearth the truth, no matter the cost. The journal, a heavy truth in your hand, now lay splayed on the concrete, its pages a silent scream. The air vibrated, not from an external force, but from the tectonic plates shifting within your own soul. Betrayal, sharp and cold, pierced through the layers of your carefully constructed cynicism. This wasn't a failure of investigation, it was a surgical amputation of justice. The journalist hadn't merely been murdered, their truth had been buried alive, the evidence systematically dismantled. You knelt, tracing the faded ink of the last entry. Crate 7B. Customs. Your memory, a cruel archivist, dredged up the original case file details, a seized shipment of antique furniture, declared lost in transit, processed through the city's main port. A shiver, not of fear but of dawning clarity, ran down your spine. This wasn't a dead end, it was a hidden path, meticulously obscured. the hours bled into a focused blur. You moved with a predator's quiet intensity, past the city's slumber, the journal's words a relentless drumbeat in your mind. The warehouse interior was a cavernous maw, swallowing the faint glow from distant streetlights. Rows upon rows of stacked crates, their labels a jumble of languages and destinations, stretched into the gloom like ancient monuments. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust, brine, and forgotten cargo. Each creak of the metal shelving, each drip of condensation, was amplified, a symphony of isolation. Crate 7B. The instruction was clear, yet the scale of the task felt monumental. You navigated the labyrinthine aisles, your breath pluming in the frigid air. The rhythmic crunch of your boots on the concrete floor was the only sound for what felt like an eternity. Your gaze swept over faded stencils, manifest numbers, and cautionary symbols, your mind a relentless sieve, filtering the irrelevant. Then, a flicker of recognition. Tucked away in a seldom-used section, beneath a tarp heavy with grime, you found it. A wooden crate, larger than most, its side scarred, its stenciled label barely legible, consigned, antiques, fragile. And in the corner, almost obscured by a smudge of grease, the faded 7B. Your heart hammered a rhythm against your ribs, a primal drum urging you onward. You worked quickly, the sounds of your efforts echoing unnervingly in the vast space. The pry bar groaned, splintering the aged wood. The lid, protesting with a long, drawn-out shriek, finally gave way. Inside, nestled amongst straw and packing peanuts, sat an ornate wooden elephant, its tusks carved from what appeared to be genuine ivory. It was precisely as the journalist had described. You remembered the police report, a routine seizure, then a bureaucratic snafu, the item declared too damaged for auction, destined for the deep storage of forgotten evidence. But the journalist's notes spoke of a hidden compartment, a final desperate attempt to secure their findings. Your fingers traced the intricate carvings, searching. The wood felt solid, inert. You pressed, tapped, ran your thumbs along every seam. Then, a subtle give, a faint click. A section of the elephant's belly, cleverly disguised by a floral motif, swung inward. Inside, nestled in a velvet lining, was not a document, but a small, sleek data chip, no larger than your thumbnail. Its surface gleamed faintly in the flashlight's beam. This was it. The journalist's final message, their legacy. Back in the relative quiet of your own space, the chip now connected to a battered, isolated laptop, you initiated the decryption sequence. File after file unspooled, encrypted emails, financial ledgers, scanned documents, audio recordings. Each one a thread, weaving together a tapestry of corruption far grander, far more insidious than you had dared to imagine. The names leaped out at you, stark and undeniable. Not just the prominent politician, but a network of financiers, lobbyists, and intelligence operatives. The journalist had meticulously documented their illicit dealings, their manipulation of public funds, their subversion of elections, all leading to a specific, catastrophic event, the very incident that had shattered your own career, the truth of which had been expertly buried beneath layers of misdirection and false testimony. This was about dismantling a system, about exposing the rot that had festered in the heart of power, consuming lives and twisting truth. The personal cost would be immense, you knew. Your life, already a fractured mosaic, would be irrevocably altered, perhaps even extinguished. But looking at the names, seeing the faces of those who had orchestrated the journalist's murder and your downfall, a profound clarity settled upon you. There was no turning back. The path ahead was fraught with peril, a descent into the deepest recesses of human depravity. But you would walk it. You would expose them, every last one. The debt owed was too great, the betrayal too profound. Marcus Thorne, once disgraced, now stood on the precipice of a war, utterly and irrevocably committed. The screen's glow reflected in your eyes, a fierce, unwavering resolve. Betrayal, a venomous current, coursed through your veins, chilling the marrow. The stark fluorescent hum above, usually an indifferent drone, now seemed to mock the seismic shift in your understanding. A distant thud, sharp and metallic, fractured the quiet. It was not the gentle settling of the building, nor the whisper of the wind through corrugated steel. This sound carried intent. Your head snapped up, eyes darting between the narrow canyons formed by cargo containers, their labels a blur of foreign ports and unknown contents. Then another. They moved with a predatory grace, their forms indistinct against the ambient light filtering through high windows. They weren't searching, they were hunting. You were the quarry. You shoved it into your inner coat pocket, the rough paper a constant reminder of the architect of your current predicament. Stand down. This is your last chance. No. This was a trap. Your mind, sharpened by years of street-level instincts, rejected the premise. Your breath hitched, not from fear, but from the sudden, stark clarity of the situation. They knew you were here. They knew what you had found. Movement. You pressed yourself flat, the rough concrete cool against your cheek. The heavy thud of boots on the floor grew louder, a relentless rhythm closing in. Now. A narrow gap between two colossal shipping containers offered a precarious escape route. You squeezed through, the metal scraping against your clothes, the smell of rust and salt filling your nostrils. On the other side, the warehouse opened into a wider bay, dominated by a massive gantry crane overhead, its steel cables glinting. This was the main artery, but also the most exposed. He's heading for the east exit. A shout, closer now, echoing off the steel beams. They were organized. They had anticipated your movements. This wasn't a random sweep, it was a coordinated operation. Your eyes scanned the environment, a mental map forming, the high catwalks, the loading bay doors, the labyrinth of goods. You spotted a maintenance ladder leading up to a utility platform near the ceiling. A long shot, but your only shot at gaining a vantage point, at understanding the full scope of your pursuers. You sprinted, a low crouch keeping you beneath the direct line of sight from the ground. You scrambled upwards, muscles screaming in protest, the metallic clang of your shoes on the rungs alarmingly loud in the sudden quiet that followed your sprint. They weren't police, their movements lacked the familiar, if sometimes clumsy, protocol. From your perch, high amidst the steel girders, you saw something else. On a control panel near the main loading bay, a small, blinking red light. A silent alarm. They hadn't just found you, they had been waiting. The journal's revelations had not just exposed the past, they had triggered a desperate present. Your gaze fell upon a particular crate below, distinct from the others. And it bore a unique, almost artistic, symbol, an intertwined serpent and an eye. The same symbol you'd seen etched subtly on a piece of stationery found amongst the journalist's belongings, dismissed then as mere eccentricity. This wasn't just a symbol, it was a brand. A mark of ownership. The pieces, once scattered, began to coalesce. This warehouse wasn't just a place of storage, it was a node in their network. What was inside that crate? A crackle from below. He's on the catwalks. Cut him off at the west end. Your time was running out. You had to make contact. Your fingers fumbled for the burner phone in your pocket, the one you used only for desperate measures. You dialed the colleague, the one person left who might still believe in the ghost of Marcus Thorne. The phone rang once, twice, a lifeline stretching across a chasm. "It's Marcus," you whispered into the receiver, your voice tight with urgency, the metallic tang of fear and adrenaline sharp on your tongue. "They're on to me. They know what I found. They're not going to let me walk away." A pause on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Marcus, what have you done?" "The news. They're calling you a fugitive. A warrant's out for your arrest." The words hit you like a physical blow. Fugitive. Framed. They hadn't just come for you, they had painted you as the villain. The ultimate betrayal. The stakes had just escalated beyond mere survival. It was now about clearing your name, about exposing them, not just for the journalist's murder, but for the entire web of deceit they had spun. "Listen to me," you urged, "I need a distraction. Something big. And I need a way out. They're moving something critical through here, something marked with a serpent and an eye. Find out what that symbol means. It's all connected." The connection crackled, then went dead. You were alone again, but no longer blind. Your heart, once heavy with the weight of the past, now beat with a fierce, defiant rhythm. They had pushed you to the edge. Now, you would push back. It is a cavernous silence, broken only by the distant hum of ventilation and the soft scuff of your boots on the polished concrete floor. The serpent and eye, a brand on your mind, guides your gaze through the rows of dormant freight. You move with a practiced grace, a phantom among the forgotten. Your hands, scarred with the memory of past struggles, trace the edges of a specific crate, its timber rough beneath your fingertips. This isn't a random search, it's a calculated descent into the heart of a pattern. A shell corporation, a front for something far more sinister, routing its clandestine cargo through this very facility. A specific code, etched into the journalist's final, fragmented notes, leads you to a crate marked Antique Textiles, Fragile. An ironic deception, you think, given the brutal reality it likely conceals. The customs seal, once pristine, now bears the faint, almost invisible trace of tampering. Someone else has been here, or rather, someone was here, long ago, meticulously covering their tracks. Your specialized tools, a legacy of your former life, glide over the wood, seeking the subtle give, the almost imperceptible seam. A false bottom, ingeniously crafted, yields to your touch. Inside, nestled among layers of innocuous packing, foam, lies not antique fabric, but a sleek, hardened data chip and a slender, leather-bound ledger. The smell of old paper and new secrets fills your nostrils. This is it. This is the heart of the serpent. You retrieve the ledger first, its pages thin and brittle. Your fingers brush across careful script, a series of dates, names, and numerical codes. Campaign contributions funnel through shell companies, offshore accounts disguised as philanthropic trusts, and at the center of it all, the politician's name appears repeatedly, not as a recipient, but as an orchestrator. Each transaction is signed not with a name, but with a small, meticulously drawn serpent and eye. The symbol, once a vague threat, now solidifies into an undeniable signature of power. Then, the data chip. You slide it into the compact reader you carry, its screen glowing faintly in the dim warehouse light. Files unfold before your eyes, a digital echo of the ledger's grim narrative. Emails, encrypted messages, and voice recordings, all dating back to the time of the journalist's investigation. You press play. A low, gravelly voice, distorted but recognizable, cuts through the quiet. The journalist is getting too close. The article, if published, will unravel everything. It must be stopped. Permanently. Another voice, calm and detached, responds, understood. The usual protocols. The pieces snap into place, forming a mosaic of betrayal and calculated murder. The murder, dismissed as a street crime, was a professional hit, orchestrated to protect a burgeoning empire of influence. The rage, a familiar companion from your past, stirs within you, but this time it is tempered by a fierce clarity. You have the proof. Undeniable. Incriminating. Enough to shatter the politician's carefully constructed facade and bring down the entire hierarchy. But you know better than to simply hand it over. The serpent's coils are too deep, its reach too vast. They would bury it, bury you, and the truth along with you. No. This demands a different approach. A direct challenge. You need to draw them out, force them into the open. You craft a message, concise and cutting, attaching a small, carefully selected fragment of the audio file, just enough to confirm your possession of the truth, but not enough to reveal its full scope. The serpent's scales are showing. The eye sees all. You secure the ledger and the data chip, tucking them into a waterproof pouch, a lifeline in the coming storm. Your gaze sweeps the cavernous warehouse, a final inventory of your surroundings. You are no longer just a disgraced detective seeking redemption, you are a hunter, baiting a predator. The air crackles with an unspoken promise of confrontation. You know you are walking into a trap, a meticulously planned ambush, but your heart, once heavy with the weight of failure, now beats with the steady, defiant rhythm of a man ready to reclaim his honor, no matter the cost. The game has begun. The cold metal taste of resolve coats your tongue, a bitter alloy forged in the crucible of your past failures. The cavernous space stretches before you, a labyrinth of stacked crates and shrouded machinery, all bathed in the anemic glow of high-mounted sodium lamps that hum like a forgotten requiem. Dust motes dance in the sickly light, tiny conspirators in the vast, still conspiracy you are here to dismantle. You know they are here. Then, from the deeper shadows between towering stacks of lumber and canvas-draped forms, figures emerge. Two hulking enforcers, their silhouettes broad and menacing, flank a leaner, sharper form, the politician, his face a mask of strained composure, his gaze flicking nervously to the third, central figure. This is the orchestrator, the architect of the shadows, whose calm demeanor belies the coiled venom within. You recognize the subtle power in their stance, the way their eyes, even from this distance, seem to weigh and measure, to calculate the cost of your presence. Believing yourself a shepherd. Your gaze locks onto theirs, unwavering. I walk into a slaughterhouse, you correct, your voice steady. A steel cable pulled taut. And I'm here to name the butchers. The politician shifts, a nervous tick pulling at the corner of their mouth. Thorne. This is madness. You have nothing. Oh, But I do, you counter, a grim smile touching your lips. I have the truth. The journalist wasn't just investigating your campaign's unsavory connections, were they? They were on the verge of exposing the entire network, the money laundering, the illicit influence peddling, the systematic dismantling of local governance to pave the way for your organization's dominance. They had traced the funds, the shell corporations, the quiet meetings in exclusive clubs. They had even uncovered the identity of the person pulling the strings, you, orchestrator. The one who groomed the politician, financed their rise, and built this empire of deceit. The journalist was about to publish a piece that would not only end the politician's career but expose your entire operation to the light. That's why they had to die. You step forward, your eyes burning with the accumulated weight of years of regret in this newfound clarity. It wasn't a random mugging, was it? That was a carefully constructed fiction. The broken window, the scattered contents of the bag, the missing laptop, all props in a macabre play. The real act was precise, calculated. A single, swift blow to the back of the head, designed to look like a fall or a desperate struggle. But the journalist was too careful, too experienced to be caught unawares in such a clumsy fashion. No, they were met, lured perhaps, by someone they trusted, someone who then delivered the fatal strike, ensuring the laptop and its damning contents disappeared before anyone knew what they truly held. The orchestrator's eyes narrow, the first crack in their placid facade. Conjecture, Thorne. Wild accusations. Is it, you challenge, your voice rising, filling the vast space. The journalist had a dead man's switch. A digital time bomb. A final failsafe for their most damning evidence. And you, orchestrator, you've been scrambling ever since, trying to locate it, trying to disarm it. But you're too late. The trigger has been pulled. The information is out. It's already on its way to every major news outlet, every independent journalist, every watchdog group. By dawn, your entire house of cards will come tumbling down. The politician's face pales, their eyes wide with dawning horror. The orchestrator, for the first time, moves, a subtle shift in their weight, a tightening of their jaw. You overestimate your reach. Thorne, the orchestrator hisses, their voice losing its smooth veneer, revealing the underlying steel. And underestimate ours. Perhaps, you concede. And it's far less forgiving than you are. With a swift, almost imperceptible nod from the orchestrator, the two enforcers surge forward. Their movements are practiced, efficient, designed to overwhelm. You brace yourself, the cold air rushing into your lungs, a stark contrast to the burning fire in your chest. The first enforcer, a mountain of muscle, lunges, a fist like a brick aimed at your head. You duck, the air displaced by his swing whistling past your ear, and pivot, using his momentum against him. Your elbow connects sharply with his ribs, a grunt of pain escaping him, but he's relentless. The second enforcer circles, cutting off your escape, a glint of metal in his hand, a short, heavy pipe. The space is vast, but the crates and machinery create choke points, corridors of danger. You weave between stacked pallets, the scent of treated wood and industrial grease filling your nostrils. The pipe swings, catching a glancing blow on your shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through your arm. You grit your teeth, pushing through it. This isn't about winning a fight, it's about buying time, about ensuring the truth, now set free, has a chance to breathe. The orchestrator watches, unmoving, their eyes like chips of obsidian, calculating, always calculating. You know they will not let you leave this warehouse. Not alive. But you have already won the greater battle. The truth is out. The mountain of an enforcer crashes into you, a wall of muscle and intent. Your breath hitches, the impact rattling your teeth, but you twist, years of honed instinct flaring. Pallets stacked high with crated goods loom, dark sentinels in the periphery. You duck beneath a wild swing, feeling the wind of it against your ear, and drive your elbow into the enforcer's midsection, a sharp, surprising blow. He falters, a moment of weakness you exploit. The second enforcer moves with predatory grace, circling, waiting for an opening. You anticipate his feint, stepping into his space before he can fully commit, your hand finding the heavy wrench you spotted moments ago, discarded near a forklift. It feels cold, solid, an extension of your resolve. A swift, arcing swing, not meant to incapacitate, but to create distance, to disrupt. The clang of metal against a support beam reverberates, a shocking report in the cavernous space. A distant siren, faint at first, then growing, pierces the night's quiet. He barks an order, a clipped, urgent sound, and the enforcers redouble their efforts, now fueled by a desperate haste. But the moment has shifted. You use the looming stacks of cargo, the narrow aisles between them, to your advantage, weaving and dodging, forcing the enforcers to separate, to break their coordinated assault. A sharp turn around a towering stack of imported machinery, and you're suddenly behind the first enforcer, shoving him with all your might. He stumbles, arms flailing, colliding with the second, sending them both off balance, a domino effect of brute force. Headlights flash through the grimy windows, painting transient streaks across the floor. The orchestrator makes his move, bolting for a side exit, a small, unassuming door tucked away near the loading docks. He knows his time is up. You don't hesitate. The enforcers are still tangled, regaining their footing. Your focus narrows to the fleeing figure. You surge forward, your lungs burning, the taste of metal on your tongue. He glances back, a look of pure, unadulterated fury distorting his features. He fumbles with the lock on the side door, his hands trembling. You tackle him, a desperate, clumsy lunge that sends you both sprawling onto the dusty concrete. A sharp pain shoots through your shoulder as you hit the ground, but you ignore it, pinning him, your knee digging into his back. He struggles, a surprisingly strong burst of resistance, but the fight has left him. The main doors burst open, revealing a cadre of uniformed officers, their weapons drawn, their faces grim. Leading them is a familiar figure, a senior detective whose gaze sweeps the scene, settling on you, then the struggling orchestrator beneath you. Recognition, then a nod of grim approval. Marcus Thorne, the senior detective's voice cuts through the din. It seems you've made quite the mess. There's no accusation, only a weary acknowledgement. The orchestrator, his face pressed against the cold floor, spits out a single, venomous word, "Thorne, you fool. You think this changes anything?" He's untouchable. The circle. The senior detective's eyes narrow, processing the desperate utterance. You rise slowly, your body aching, your vision blurring at the edges. Officers swarm, securing the orchestrator, cuffing the dazed enforcers. The warehouse is alive with activity, flashlights cutting through the dust motes, radios crackling with urgent commands. He turns his head slightly, meeting your eyes, and a ghost of a smirk plays on his lips. The journalist, he hisses, low enough only for you to hear, he found the ledger. The one detailing the campaign funds. The ledger. The specific, damning piece of evidence that linked the presidential candidate directly to the illicit funding and, by extension, to the murder of the journalist who uncovered it. The circle wasn't just influencing, they were orchestrating, eliminating. The senior detective approaches you, his expression unreadable. Marcus, R. You all right? The ledger, you manage, your voice hoarse. He said the journalist found the ledger. The campaign funds. And the circle dot. The senior detective's jaw tightens. We'll follow up on that. Everything will be processed. For now, you need to be debriefed. He gestures towards the exit, where an ambulance has now pulled up, its lights painting the night in an urgent, pulsing red and blue. As you step out into the cool night air, the sounds of official activity fading behind you, a profound weariness settles into your bones. The public, will wake to a storm. The news will be a maelstrom of accusations and denials. The politician's campaign, once seemingly unstoppable, will crumble under the weight of this truth. But redemption, you realize, is not a sudden, clean absolution. It's a slow, grinding process, paved with aches and ghosts. The cost of this victory, the sheer brutal effort of it, feels heavy in your chest. The journalist's murder, once a haunting stain on your career, is now laid bare, its true, horrifying context revealed. But the circle remains, its full reach and power yet to be truly understood. This battle is won, but the war, you sense, is far from over. The tension remains, a taut string vibrating beneath the surface of this hard-won peace. The cool night air, once a balm against the heat of the chase, now seems to carry the ghost of the past. You are ushered past the flashing ambulance lights, not into its sterile embrace, but towards a different kind of confinement. Its vast, cavernous interior swallows the sound, the last vestiges of the night's chaos. Fluorescent lights, suspended high above, cast a sickly yellow glow over rows of stacked containers, their metal skins reflecting the stark illumination like silent sentinels. The air, thick with the scent of aged cardboard, industrial solvents, and something faintly metallic, clings to your skin. Forklifts stand motionless, their forks raised in arrested gestures, like slumbering beasts. This is where the world's hidden truths often find their brief, unceremonious unveiling. You are led to a cleared section, a makeshift command center amidst the dormant machinery. A portable table, its surface littered with evidence bags and printouts, stands under a single, brighter lamp. The senior detective gestures towards a chair, a utilitarian plastic seat that offers no comfort. You sit, the tension in your shoulders a persistent knot. Marcus, the senior detective begins, his voice low, cutting through the vast silence, what you did tonight. It wasn't by the book. His gaze is unwavering, a challenge and an acknowledgement intertwined. But it worked. You meet his eyes, a flicker of defiance in your own. The book was never going to catch them. He nods slowly, a thin line forming between his brows. Perhaps not. The politician is contained. His network is unraveling as we speak. We found the ledgers, Marcus. Everything you said. He pauses, picking up a clear evidence bag. Inside, a small, ornate silver locket glints. This was on the second in command, the one who tried to flee the estate. It contains a miniature photograph. He pushes the bag across the table. You pick it up, your fingers tracing the cool plastic. Inside the locket, the faded image of a woman, her smile gentle, her eyes bright with a spark you vaguely recall from old case files. The journalist. A cold wave washes over you, not of despair, but of chilling clarity. This wasn't just a political hit, it was personal. A calculated silencing, perhaps rooted in a deeper, more insidious betrayal than mere power. His wife, the senior detective explains, his voice softer now. Or, rather, the woman he thought was his wife. He was the journalist's primary source, Marcus. He was providing the information that would have exposed the politician's entire operation. When the journalist got too close, too public, the politician ordered the hit. But it was his second in command, the one with the locket, who carried it out. He was in love with her. He believed he was saving her from the politician's wrath, and from the journalist exposing her role. The revelation strikes you with the force of a physical blow. The journalist, not just a target, but a victim caught in a web of deceit, ambition, and a twisted, desperate love. The second-in-command's actions, a desperate attempt to protect his lover, ultimately sealed the journalist's fate and his own. It was a tragedy woven into a conspiracy. He was found later, Marcus, the senior detective continues, his voice hushed. Disposed of by the politician once he knew her usefulness was exhausted. The second-in-command's misplaced loyalty didn't save her. It just ensured more bodies pile up. The weight of the locket in your hand feels immense. It's the final, agonizing piece of the puzzle, the human cost laid bare. The politician, a monster of ambition, had used everyone, discarded everyone, including the very people who thought they were serving him, or those they loved. You close your eyes for a brief moment, seeing the journalist's vibrant face from the old files, now superimposed with the image in the locket. This wasn't just about justice for a professional, but for a life caught in the crosshairs of a ruthless power game and misguided affection. What about the larger network, you ask, opening your eyes, the question a testament to the lingering threat? The ones pulling the strings from the elite's highest echelons? The senior detective sighs, running a hand over his tired face. That, Marcus, is a much larger beast. We've clipped a significant wing tonight. The politician's downfall will send ripples. Some will scramble, some will flee. But the core remains. This isn't over. It never truly is. His words resonate with a profound truth. You've brought down a kingpin, exposed a significant part of the machinery, but the underlying system, the very fabric of injustice, remains. Yet, for the first time in years, a quiet sense of accomplishment settles within you. You pursued the truth, against all odds, against your own demons, and you found it. You gave the journalist a voice again. What happens now, you ask, the question hanging in the dusty air of the warehouse. The senior detective looks at you, a hint of something akin to respect in his gaze. Now, we process. We build the case. For you, Marcus, there's a long road ahead. We can't simply reinstate you. Not yet. But what you've done tonight, it has changed things for us. For justice. You nod, understanding the unspoken implications. Redemption isn't a badge pinned back on your lapel. It's this feeling, this quiet resolve that burns within you, a renewed purpose. But it is a path. And you are ready to walk it. The locket still warm in your hand, you glance at the senior detective. The fight is far from over, the larger beast still lurks, but you have found your way back to the hunt. Your gaze drifts to the warehouse's high, unseen ceiling, then settles on the single, determined glint in the senior detective's eyes. The night is still young, and for the first time in a very long time, so are you.